Welcome to The Better Life with Dr. Marianne Pinkston. Join Dr. Pinkston today as she teaches you how an integrative approach to health, combining holistic and contemporary medical information, can lead you to the better life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Marianne Pinkston.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston. I'm Dr. Marianne Pinkston, and I welcome you. First, today, I want to thank everybody. On YouTube, we have reached 28,000 subscribers plus now, and I am so happy and so grateful. And so for all of you out there who watch and listen, thank you and welcome in again. I'm going to bring you another fantastic guest. Now, I've had him on before, but there's such a larger story back behind it, and this is Dr. Andy Heyman, that I have known for a long time now. He is Medical Director of Internal Medicine at the Department of Clinical Research and Leadership at George Washington University School of Medicine, and also helped develop Metabolic Code, which has been a highlight on my show several times. So a great thing he's done there, but also Director of Academic Affairs at Metabolic Medical Institute and at A4M, and has taught me probably as far as immunology and Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome, mold disease, Lyme disease, all this. It taught me everything I know and plus some. And I am so grateful and honored to have you on, Dr. Heyman. Welcome. Thank you for joining in. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to see you as always. And it's wonderful to be back.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. And so your history of, mold illness is distinct. And I know you have some personal history with it too. I want you to tell your story, but what I want people to know and get an idea of is how astute you are at this, topic. And you are among, I feel, the top leader and one of the top leaders in the mold world. And so thank you for all you do, because this is a mystery illness. It's not so much a mystery really, but to many people in our audience out there, it is. And so first of all, please tell us your story and then kind of what you're doing now in the mold world.
Like many people, sort of life happens to you in a sense, and it's kind of in unexpected ways. And I was a fourth year medical student at University of Michigan, and I had the opportunity to spend a month in Virginia at a little integrative clinic in the countryside, which I eventually bought years later. Nice. At the time, I was training for an Ironman, and was spending a lot of time outside running and biking. And one day felt an itch on the back of my knee, and it was a tick, an embedded tick. And as you know, in medical school, they don't really teach you about Lyme other than to say it's easy to treat, a few months, a few weeks of an antibiotic, and you should be okay, if needed at all, kind of thing.
Right.
I ignored it. I didn't really think much of it. I grew up on the East Coast. You pick ticks off yourself, throughout childhood. And it certainly didn't register at that time either. But I started to slowly notice that my fitness and my health more generally began to change. And I think when you're sort of a tuned athlete, small changes are pretty easily recognized. Absolutely. Because you're kind of monitoring, sort of, how is this 6-mile run? How is this 80-mile bike ride? What was that swim like? What was my times? How did I feel? All of that. And I could tell pretty quickly that things were not right. And I was never able to go on and do the Ironman, both because I started residency, but I didn't feel great. And my training regimen sort of fell apart. And that was a huge disappointment for me. And my initial symptoms were anxiety and breathlessness. So what was an easy 5-mile run became literally impossible for me. And then finally, an odd one, and maybe you've seen this before in your practice, but excess sweating.
Yeah.
And, I hyperhidrosis, sort of the fancy doctor speak for just sweating a lot, especially out of my armpits. And
Absolutely.
I was soaking through clothing. And it was incredibly embarrassing. I tried to hide it. I had no idea what was going on. It just kind of came out of the blue. And it still didn't register that maybe I could trace it back to that tick bite.
Right.
Several years later, I'm now, deeper into my residency. You're on call every third night. You're exhausted anyway. So there's no great way to tell that I was as sick as I was for other reasons, because residency, of course, is terrible. Yep. But I remember one day I was rotating with a neurologist, and he looked at me and he said, Andy, and I said, I kind of thought I did, but I once again, it's something I sort of ignored. He's like, but it's real. Like, you've got a significant Bell's palsy. Wow. And even I didn't, and this was several years later from the tick bite, I still didn't make the connection between the fatigue and the brain fog and the sweating and the anxiety and the Bell's palsy. And I mean, if you were a first-year medical student and you kind of look up the symptoms of Lyme, plus the hallmark sign, the single most important physical finding, it's a Bell's palsy, right? It was all there, and I still didn't connect the dots.
Wow.
And like many of us, I sort of just soldiered through.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until years later where I left the University of Michigan, which that was a hard decision because I'd been there for 16 years. I joined the faculty. I enjoyed my kind of academic responsibilities, but I decided to move to that, ironically enough, to that little clinic in the countryside. And patient after patient was showing up at the practice, and East Coasters are much more attuned to the idea of Lyme. So quite frankly, at my practice, everybody was saying, I have Lyme disease until proven otherwise. It didn't even matter what their symptoms were.
Right.
But I have to say, I started to realize that I felt the way my patients were, complaining.
Unbelievable.
And I don't feel like I'm very different from you guys. So I did the testing, and sure enough, I was positive for Lyme disease. But it took me 10 years from tick bite to diagnosis.
Yep.
To figure out I had Lyme. That's how long I've been running around in my system.
I think that's common. I think that happens to so many, mainly because like you and I, like you said, we weren't taught. We're not taught these things. And I even in San Antonio talked to a rather wonderful infectious disease doctor that's well known there, and said, I think some of my patients have Lyme. He said, it doesn't exist here. That's all in the Northeast. That doesn't exist here. And proven that wrong, but I think these people live 10, 20 years, feeling terrible and not knowing why and nobody to help diagnose. And seems like a similar experience, but bless your heart.
Yeah. And that's, you're right. There's lots of people out there. They don't know they have it. They haven't connected the dots.
Yeah.
And I was, I did the standard testing. I didn't have to do sort of the weirdo IGX or DNA connections or Vibrant. I didn't have to go to any of the specialty labs. I just did LabCorp. And sure enough,
there it was.
I was clear. I was positive. And in that moment where the labs came back, my brain returned to that single moment where I grabbed that tick from the back of my knee and I said, I can't believe it. It's been 10 years. And so, two things. One, I knew I had to treat it. But two, I was not equipped. I was very respectful of the idea that I had some kind of chronic tick-borne illness and I had no clue what to do.
Right.
And even worse, I was dangerous enough in a sense to know how complicated, a regimen could be, but also that there's all these opinions about what to do. And everybody, so when you dive into that field, there are basically two voices. The regular medical community says, it's easy to treat. A few weeks of docs, even years later, you'll be fine.
Right.
And then the other community says, the sky is falling. You've had Lyme forever, and you're going to have Lyme forever. And even if we, dip you in antibiotics, for months on end, you're still going to have, problems and issues. And it's terrible and horrible to treat. And we have to do all these,
You're right.
Right. I mean, you kind of get one or the other.
Right.
You hope regular medicine is right, but
Right.
you're worried that maybe this other community, is sort of signing your death sentence of, this is just what you got and you're never going to, So the first thing I did as an academic, in a sense, is I went to the research and read everything I could. The problem, of course, is I realized very quickly there was so little known about what to do in a chronic situation.
Yeah.
And so then you have to go back to these sort of individuals that are thought to be luminaries in the field. Maybe they know something, maybe they don't. I don't know. So I kind of went on my own residency and I spent a lot of time with a lot of Lyme experts. And I learned everything I could and learned as many different regimens as I could.
Yes.
And everybody had a different approach and a different opinion. But I think my personality is I tend to kind of be a bit of a maximizer. So I said, just give me all of it. So I did, so for basically 18 months, I took lots of different antibiotics in very complex regimens, rotating through a focus on Borrelia and Bartonella and Babesia and the other co-infections, biofilm and drainage and detox. And I mean, Marian, I did all of it, right?
Yes.
And I learned a lot, right? Like I sort of experimented on myself of what these combinations were. And I felt like over time I got pretty good at it. And I started to apply it in my patients and I saw some of them getting better. So I'm like, okay, there's something here. But a lot of patients didn't get better.
Right.
The Lyme people will tell you, well, the sky is still falling. They failed antibiotics. They need more antibiotics.
Right.
So I'm left with this idea of, wait a minute, I just doused myself in antibiotics. Do I need more, or is there something else going on?
Right.
And that's when I started exploring kind of related topics. And I heard about some guy on the Eastern Shore doing some interesting stuff in mold, and that mold often masquerades as Lyme. And so I reached out to Dr. Shoemaker.
Yes.
And I said, hey, why don't you come to my clinic? I'll compensate you. I want you to come for a couple days, and I'll put you up in a nice hotel. We'll get to know each other, and I want you to lecture to the local practitioners. I'll make it free for them, and I want everybody around here to start learning about what you have to say. And so I remember very clearly, brought him out on a weekend, met him on a Friday night, had a drink at a bar Friday night, and then he kind of did his thing on Saturday at my practice. And we had a great couple days. Nice. And so I went ahead and started doing some of the, quote, CIRS labs. And for people who don't know what CIRS means, it stands for Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome. It's a mouthful. We call it CIRS for short, but it's really code for mold, yes. Right? It's code for stuff growing in your home.
Yes.
And one of the things that Dr. Shoemaker did, which I do think was a moment of brilliance and a breakthrough, is that he figured out that mold causes an immune response that's different and unique from what we thought mold did to the body. So for many years, we used to think mold causes allergies, right? Causes an allergic response, and you get the stuffy nose and the itchy, watery eyes. But what he figured out was that mold can cause a separate reaction that's much more dangerous, much more insidious, much more harmful to your health. And to measure that, he had to come up with a set of markers that we don't normally look at. So we call them the CIRS labs. And he has something called the visual test. Yeah. And, there are other things too, right, to kind of uncover this inflammation.
Yes.
So that was the kind of beginning point. And so I did the markers on myself, and sure enough, they were very, very high. And I realized that I was either now sick from both Lyme and mold, or there was some relationship between Lyme and mold. And there was kind of a handoff that maybe now I'm mold. At the same time, George Mason University had approached me and asked me to help them develop a new and better Lyme test. Mm-hmm. And so I did. It was called the NanoTrap test. Mm-hmm. And so I got really into kind of the testing methodology and techniques for Lyme. And over time, because I had access to kind of the inner circle, I sort of figured out I didn't have Lyme anymore, that the months and months of antibiotics kind of did its job, but I was left with a mold problem. And that's the other big learning points that I want your listeners to appreciate, is that sometimes one type of exposure can ignite a reaction to a different kind of exposure.
Absolutely.
You'll find people that solely react to mold. But I have lots of patients where it was Lyme first that led to their mold sensitivity. The other thing that I've seen, which I think is fascinating, and the molecular biology is there. Mm-hmm. Emotional trauma and high amounts of stress can also ignite your sensitivity to mold.
Yes.
Right? Because the cells in the mitochondria, they don't distinguish one threat from another. They just know a threat is present. And if the threat is extreme enough, the mitochondria go into alarm mode. That sends the whole body into alarm mode. And now the brain and the body ignites into a fire.
Yeah.
And so we've seen this in our research as well. So that was kind of the backstory, that Lyme led to mold, and I had to figure it out. There was no cavalry coming. Nobody was going to come to help.
Absolutely. And you are so correct. I see this as well. Wouldn't have realized it had I not learned everything that you and Dr. Schumacher have put out there. And I agree that, and what a great story, because in that story, you just defined what so many patients, experience and have absolutely no clue what's going on. Nobody to support them. You said the cavalry's not coming. The cavalry's not coming for them either. And so, what you've done is set up now, and I know the protocols and whatnot that you have set up or simplify, try to simplify, because it is incredibly complex. And I think I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, because I want people to know and understand first of all, what they're seeing and feeling and experiencing are real, and this is real science. And there's definitive science. No matter what the contemporary medical community has said and put forth out there, this is legitimate, real science. But once they understand and know what's happening to them, I think many people do. I think many people come in and go from doctor to doctor and, have given their story so many times and haven't been believed. And they do pop from place to place. They've studied, they know, and they know their own bodies. But where do they begin? Where does somebody even begin now to find out what to do and how to get diagnosed, how to approach it?
Well, it's there's sort of this intermediary quiet place between the elements of biology and medicine that I want to unpack just for a moment. And you just talked about it, which is the patient experience. And the thing that I've come to first and foremost is that this is a trauma-based illness.
Yes.
And, we talk a lot about predisposition to mold, and people have certain genetics that do worse than others. But at the end of the day, something set that person up to start reacting to their environment, reacting to their home. Yeah. Usually kind of, well into life. We don't see infants doing this. We don't see, we see kids to some degree, but why is it the 40-year-old, right, the 60, the 70-year-old, why later in life? Yeah. And I think it's because our systems of resiliency and our deep reserves, they get degraded over time. And we lose our capacity to function in a world that's stressful, that's toxic, that's difficult to negotiate. There's a lot of complexity about modern life. And a lot of us get overwhelmed. And at some point, it's not just the psyche that breaks down, but it's the body that goes into alarm mode.
Yes.
Medicine is not set up to uncover this kind of reaction or response. It's real, it's measurable, it's occurring all the way down to the molecular level. We now know how to measure it down to the genes.
Absolutely.
And we can show that we've gone into this other reactive space that's affecting every part of the person's life, every part of their health. But even worse, because it's hard to measure, medicine doesn't believe you.
Right.
Because not everybody who lives in the same home gets sick. Not everybody in that home believes you.
Right.
Because when you finally get to the conclusion that it's your home that's making you sick, your sanctuary, your likely greatest financial investment, that's a trauma.
It is.
Because what ends up happening, people say, I've run out of money.
Yeah.
I'm completely isolated. I've been to countless practitioners. I've gotten no help. Nobody believes me when I tell them how sick I feel. And now you're saying it's the one place where I have to be every day, that I can't be here.
Right.
Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? Who's going to fix my home? Who's going to fix me? It's one of the most destabilizing illnesses I can think of. And even worse, that inflammation that we've uncovered, if left unchecked long enough, it starts to damage tissues and organs. And I published research, and I have a current research study that's going on now showing that there can be an injury to the brain that's very similar to what we see in traumatic brain injury. It's almost identical. And they're both very unique as a pattern that usually in neurodegenerative illnesses like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and other related conditions, we see a brain that tends to shrink over time. But in traumatic brain injury and mold exposure, we see areas of the brain that swell and other shrink. Very unique. But the brain potential is there. So think about that. Not only is your brain getting injured, but nobody believes you. And so this is an incredibly difficult illness for the person going through it. And I am absolutely committed, as quite frankly, one of the few academics in the United States that cares enough about producing research, creating professional programs at the university level to train practitioners, and to create resources for the public. There isn't enough help. And as I said, the cavalry isn't coming. Right. So there's sort of a path that I've decided to take to try and create help and resources for people. But the starting point, as you say, is people are isolated. They're vulnerable. They are unsure of who to believe or what to believe. Do I really have this or not? This is honestly, and the way that it affects your body and sort of every system, and it can influence almost any disease process because it masquerades in a sense.
Yes.
It's actually one of the worst illnesses I can think of.
I agree with you. Yes.
Right? You. It just robs you of your whole life.
Thank you. It does. I have watched my poor daughter, my own, child, lose her quality of life and affect her in every way possible. She was a drummer and a great drummer, but she's to the point now where she can't function. You can't work. You have to work both hands independently. You have to work your hands and feet independently and all four of them independently at that. And the brain just isn't functioning, plus other psychological issues that have just damaged her ability to live her life at 24. Yeah. And so I've seen it firsthand. And what you say is 1,000 billion% true.
Yeah.
And I know there are others out there who do. And you are absolutely correct in being one of the very few academicians that will stand up. And so thank you and thank God for you and doing that. It always helps, doesn't it, that you've had to live it and do it. And I agree. what about, can we focus on the trauma and the stress just a little bit and the changes that go on in the brain? I've really focused on this lately, just trying to learn more. And I agree with you. So how does trauma and stress, just even general stress, it doesn't have to be something super traumatic. So I tell people, like you say, trauma is just knowing that you have to move out of your home because you know, your home is making you sick. You might have to quit a job for it. You may have had a car accident. You may have had sexual abuse. You may have, had terrible parents. There's so many different things there. So trauma is a buzzword now, but it's real. And it's real. And just stressors of everyday traffic and, fighting people at the grocery store and, what we had during that, the first few years of that terrible illness, in the last decade that we had and everything. These are all stressors, traumas. So how does that affect us?
So as you might recall, for many years, I lectured on the topic of stress and the stress response, and I've done research on the subject. And most of that was focused on the general physiology of stress. That is to say, what are the systemic bodily reactions to stress and how do our hormones change? What occurs with cortisol? How does that affect the immune system? But mold taught me something deeper. And when I met Dr. Shoemaker in 2014, not only did we become very close personally, but we became research partners. And we set off on a new agenda to better define what this illness was. One of the things that we did almost immediately was secure expertise and a lab in genomics, and in particular, an area of genomics called transcriptomics. So what does that mean? It's a mouthful. It's very simple. We develop the capacity to measure how different genes are turning on and off in the body relative to a mold exposure. And so we thought that if we gathered enough information, enough data, there might be a signature pattern, like a fingerprint, that different genes would show. Because you can measure the genes that are there, but you can also measure what the genes are doing. Yes. And we wanted to measure what the genes were doing. We wanted to measure the music of the genes. We wanted to measure the melody and the harmony. And sure enough, there was a song that was being played. Yeah. And we found it. Now, it took us thousands of samples over years to identify where was that song being played in the genes. But we found it. And one of the things that became clear was that it was a set of genes that related to a very specific part of the cell. And we thought originally that it was going to be the central brain of the cell called the nucleus that houses most of the genes that would be part of, finding the song. We were wrong. Right. It turns out that the part of the cell that orchestrates or responds to stressors of any and all type is not the nucleus, it's the mitochondria. And so what's a mitochondria? So a mitochondria, and you and I were taught this years ago. We were taught many years ago that the mitochondria was merely responsible for producing energy for the cell, right? You remember
the power
the power pack of the cell, right? The battery of the cell producing ATP. And that's kind of the beginning and the end of the story for many, many, many years. Now we understand that it plays the central role in managing cellular resources when there's a threat. And it makes sense because is it going to send energy into producing, burning oxygen and communicating with cells normally and running the usual state of affairs of the cell? Or will a threat signal come along and different mitochondrial genes turn on to say, I need to send energy and resources into protecting myself. So what it'll do is it'll turn down certain pathways that it doesn't need, and it turns up other pathways that it does need that aren't normally on. So what are some of those pathways? Inflammation. Most people don't know that inflammation is actually under control of the mitochondria.
Yeah.
It also controls the way we use nutrients, the way we use lipids, the way we deal with toxins in general, and how efficiently we detox. Who knew? The mitochondria were really the brains of the cell.
Absolutely.
And what I like to say is that the mitochondria can orchestrate whether or not the cell and the body is either going to be an energy plant or a battleship. And when you have an emotional trauma, when you have a mold threat, when you deal with COVID, when you're dealing with, if you have a car accident or whatever it is, that stress signal doesn't go to the nucleus. It goes right to the mitochondria, and we go into battleship mode.
That's right.
And that's what our research showed. That's what other research showed. And when the cell is in battleship mode, the whole body is. So we're in that stress response. And yes, we see the cortisol changes and, all sorts of other things that we can measure on kind of a broader level.
Right.
But we never really appreciated the degree to which that the organizing principle, that little innocent power pack of the cell, was doing all of this.
Absolutely.
But it is.
Absolutely.
So we can measure it. We can measure the song now, which we never used to be able to do. It's an enormous breakthrough for us in that regard. And we can say it with confidence.
Absolutely. It really is. And also the explanation behind why some people are so susceptible and others aren't. Like you mentioned, in the same house, in the same family, there are people who don't get sick, There are people who do. So I think in the daughter situation, took over a lot of my genetic, issues. And the other two may be more like dad, who doesn't suffer from any of these issues. And it does create a battle in the family a bit about, what's going on with her, and gets shunned a little. It's not on purpose, but certainly there for real. So in the mitochondria, well, let's turn it this way then. If you are, if this is starting to sound like you, if this is starting to sound like your situation or a loved one or somebody where does somebody get started? How do they know? How do they know to start to get control here or find out if that's what they have?
So I think there's several elements to that, but the first is to trust yourself.
Absolutely.
Right? Trust yourself. If you feel like something has shifted inside and you're not really you anymore, that something's wrong.
Absolutely.
And so that's the starting point. Most people will recognize that this change has happened. It will feel to some degree vague, and the reason why I say vague is because some of the hallmark symptoms are fatigue and fog and lack of motivation and kind of a low-grade depression, usually mixed with some anxiety. There's often sort of physical limitations where people feel like they just can't get through the day, that they're just wasted and tired mentally and physically. And then there's a lot of other specific symptoms that can arise too. One of the more common are digestive problems, reflux, bloating, constipation, food sensitivities, SIBO. And then it gets worse from there. Gastroparesis and gallbladder dyskinesia. And right, so just within the digestive tract, we see, because the brain-gut connection, as you know, is very strong. And that is quite clear in the experience of mold patients, that it's a body and brain that's on fire.
Absolutely.
And every system is affected. So if you feel like your health has shifted and you have these hallmark symptoms of fatigue and brain fog and irritability and listlessness and something's wrong,
yes,
can't quite figure it out, this is potentially the category you need to explore. Now, how do we verify this? How do we know that this is the illness? And there's sort of layers of tests that you can do. What we have found is that, interestingly, and you and I are sort of tuned into this, we like our blood labs, right? There's lots of blood labs that we can do. But it turns out, if you go to the research, the most reliable way to know whether or not you're having an exposure is sort of what I would consider the big three. Number one, do you have typical symptoms? The fatigue, brain fog, just not feeling good. Oh, and the other one, which is really a hallmark, and I know your listeners are going to say, I can't believe this, weight gain.
Yes.
So people gain weight with this illness, and it's very hard to get rid of until you strip out inflammation.
Absolutely.
So if you're tired and gaining weight and brain fog, in the old days, you and I would say, it's the thyroid. Well, no, it's deeper than that, right?
Yes.
So you've got those typical symptoms, number one. Number two of three is, what about your home? Are there any musty smells or mildewy odors? Is there a sense of dampness or heaviness in the air? Do you feel better when you leave the home? Are there certain rooms that you avoid? Do you feel worse when the HVAC system is turned on? Are often clues. Or, of course, is there a history of a leak or water damage? We all know things will start growing if water is sitting for at least 48 hours. By definition.
48 hours.
48 hours. That's it. You got to do a little bit of thinking about the home. So the idea is suspected or known exposure. So do I have symptoms? And do I have a suspected or known exposure? And then the third anchor is very simple. It's a visual test. And the visual test is called the visual contrast test. And it was developed by the military many, many years ago. It measures a specific aspect of vision. And this part of vision declines when we have a brain on fire. So we have difficulty with color discrimination, or otherwise what we'd say seeing an edge. So this is a test you can take online. It's 10 minutes. It's simple to do. And ultimately you get a pass or a fail. Most people living in mold will fail this test, about 90%.
Yes.
10% won't. So just be careful. 10% won't pass, or will pass the test regardless. But most people, 90%, will fail the test. So if you got the characteristic symptoms, you have a known or suspected exposure, and you fail your visual test, we have a 98.6% accuracy rate of identifying this illness. That's all you need to be highly suspicious and to kind of get going. So we also, I don't know if you know this, but I spent the last year with a bunch of scientists, and we just updated and made much more advanced the visual test.
Okay.
So the have now is very, very accurate. And I'm quite thrilled with the precision of it and the reliability. So the visual test now is a really, really reliable. And so those are my three anchors. Now, you can go deeper. You can do labs after that. You can do the fancy genomic testing if you wanted to. But for people who just want to do the quick and dirty, it's, do I feel terrible? Does my home have a problem? Did I fail the visual test? You kind of have an answer. Pretty simple.
It is. Thank you.
Yeah. Pretty simple.
That is wonderful. So I want to talk a little bit more about then how you kind of test the home and do those things, because that is always a huge conundrum. We need to take a short little break. And so I'm going to keep everybody on pins and needles on that one. Then a little bit about treatment too and how you get started with that. But I want to hear a little bit about your new website and what you're doing. Of course, this is what this is for, to get the word out for sure. Tell us about it.
Depression, anxiety, low energy, weakness, these are just some symptoms of low B12 levels. And the absorbable B12 folate supplement that's helping people declare victory over depression symptoms is De Novo Plus B12 by Magna Pharmaceuticals. Patients with symptoms of depression often exhibit low levels of folate and vitamin B12. The human body needs sufficient folate intake to produce the essential neurotransmitters serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These neurotransmitters alleviate feelings of sadness, anxiety, and gloom. What makes De Novo Plus B12 so successful? De Novo Plus B12 contains readily absorbable folate and B12. That means it's more successful at correcting the root cause of your deficiency, not just the symptoms. Whether you are suffering with low energy, depression, fatigue, or anxiety, you owe it to yourself to learn more at magnaweb.com. That's magnaweb.com. Please let us know at checkout that you heard about De Novo Plus B12 on The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Marianne Pinkston, and here with Dr. Andy Heyman, who is probably one of the most compassionate and intelligent doctors out there, but also the leader in mold disease and Lyme. And we've been talking about it for quite a while now. I fell into the hole there, Andy. It was deep. And thank you for all of the information that you're giving. So continuing on, and knowing now you've done the visual contrast test, you've identified the symptoms, and you know something has happened in the home. 48 hours really blows my mind. I thought it would take a little longer than that. But now what do you do? Now where do you go?
Yeah. So it's sort of it's a two-track journey. And one side is the home itself, investigating the home. The other side is your health and what do you do about it? I think this is probably a good time to talk about my new website called Beyond Mold. And this has been a journey in and of itself. The point of developing this resource for people was to be able to scale the ability to help people go through this process in a deep and meaningful way, and in a very transparent way, but also in a way that's affordable. One of the problems is people have access to the right professionals when it comes to the subject. The other problem is, even if you have access, you and I know how expensive it can be to go to some of these professionals.
Yes.
And so I wanted to solve both of those problems simultaneously. So we created an environment that very simply answers two questions. Does my home have a problem, and what do I do about it? And do I have a problem from my home, and what do I do about it? And so all the resources a person needs are on Beyond Mold. And so we can take the home first. So we've developed what we call our Mold Sense screening program. And Mold Sense is very simply a way to determine, are you at risk for this issue? So there is a very sophisticated questionnaire that you go through about your home. And it predicts how risky your home is.
Yes.
The other is you do the visual test, you fill out some symptoms, and we can rank, well, how much is your health at risk from this issue? So our Mold Sense screening process is very simple but highly predictive of, do you have an issue? Then if you say, okay, I think I have a problem with my home, but where do I go from here? On our website, on the home remediation page, we make it even easier for you. We have images of different types of homes.
Right.
And we show you exactly how to test based on the structure of your home. Do you have a basement or not? Do you have a main level only or an upper level? Do you have all three or some combination thereof? And then we guide you in terms of which testing you should do based on your home.
Yep.
And you can actually now purchase those different test kits on our website.
Right there. Yes.
Right. Now,
yes.
let's just say it comes back and you go, oh my gosh, my test results are high. I knew it. I'm failing my visual test. I've got these symptoms. I could smell mold somewhere in the home, and the tests have come back, and it's real. Now what? We have a program that for $99 a month, have unlimited messaging access to all of our experts, including home experts, to ask them any questions you want about what to do. And then we take you through programs to begin to further assess the home and answer questions about what to do about it.
Yes.
On our website, we have everything from Branch Basics, which is a special cleaning solution, to very advanced microfiber cloths to reduce the microbial content on surfaces. We have all the best air filters, the best vacuum cleaners, and we teach you how to deal with your home.
Nice.
And we make sure that you always have access to experts at a very low price. I wanted to make sure. Now, let's say you want to talk to someone. Well, you can contact one of our home experts, one of our health experts. You can contact me. And so if you're going to call a home expert, it's $100 for 30 minutes to get advice. I mean, Marianne, think about that. These are the top people in the world.
Yes.
I've assembled in one place and beyond mode. They're literally the experts in the world.
I don't think people realize that sometimes you go to a doctor and it's like $2,000, $2,500 for a package for a month, and you don't get to speak to it.
We're $99 a month, and you can email us whenever you want. Absolutely. And we're doing this on purpose because I want to scale. I wanted the best experts using the best model and the best resources and tools. The other thing that we've done, and this is true for the home side and the health side, is we have incredible free resources, handouts, protocols, checklists. I've interviewed every expert you could imagine. I have hours of interviews about the home, about your health. It's an entire library. It's a whole universe of learning. And it's well beyond what I would call Mold 101. It's everything you need to know. I'm also posting an entire clinician's manual that if you wanted to really learn how to do this in depth, I give it away. It's there for free. All those resources are for free on the website. On the medical side, we you can just click a button and you'll be able to click through the website and it takes you into our telemedicine platform. And if you're someone who has a relatively uncomplicated medical history, you fill out some information, a doctor will review it, and they will release a prescription for your first therapy, which is well call. Yes. You don't even need to talk to a doctor. You can get access to your medication right away. We also bundle supplements to support that initial process. So we take people through medically a 5-phase treatment journey to recovery. And so you have access to a telemedicine clinic for low-cost medical treatment, but then you're joining our $99 a month program so that you always have access to people who will help you through the process as well. And you can call us too. If you want a regular consult, again, which is very inexpensive, we have health experts and home experts ready. So we have a 5-phase treatment process attached to an inexpensive telemedicine clinic. That first visit at the telemedicine clinic, you get to, you'll talk to a medical expert, a home expert, and a health expert for $125. Marianne,
I'm just
all three for $125. Yeah. And that money includes your well call.
Wow.
A month's prescription.
That's not cheap. That's amazing. I mean, what you're doing is cheap. I'm saying just a prescription well call. If you just go, you can't go through good and get
well call, much more money than that.
That's amazing. Yes. Oh my gosh.
And so we have a very structured treatment program. Mm-hmm. We've posted all 5 phases or steps online on the website. Mm-hmm. I tell you exactly what you're going to do. Every step, you have a checklist. You have videos that go with every step. You have all the support material you need. You have your coaching support. You've got your medical support. You've got everything you need to go through this process. And we wanted to make sure that most people could afford this. Mm-hmm. There's some things I can't, cost-wise, I can't control. Supplements are supplements. A vacuum cleaner is a vacuum. I can't. But the way we guide you And the amount of expertise that we bring to the table, honestly, I this has been the most important work I think I've ever done.
Absolutely.
And the other part is on the back end, we're collecting data on what's working, what's not working. What do we do in the home? What do we do for your health? And for the first time, we're going to be able to produce research that combines health assessments with home assessments to show that people are actually getting better. That's never done before. There's studies on mold, there's studies on people who are sick from mold, but no one's ever created the scientific bridge between the two worlds, and we're building that bridge. We actually have already built it. And so I feel very strongly that in many ways, we have three legs of the academic stool with Beyond Mold. We have the support that you need. We've got tremendous educational material, all free, and we're doing research that needs to be done. I have an incredible world-class research team that I've assembled to track everything and show that what we're doing is working at scale.
Yes.
That we don't need to break the bank to do this.
Absolutely.
And so these principles of transparency and scientific credibility and affordability, they're not just words for me. They really matter. And you'll see that all of this has been assembled on Beyond Mold. Nobody's ever done this before.
No. And this could be a great example for other diseases and other problems that, should be done. Avoiding some of the larger, lobbyist features that we have in medicine and pharmaceuticals and things like that. I mean, this is the way it should be done. If anybody can repeat after me, Nobel Peace Prize, that would be wonderful, because this is really amazing. And I don't think people understand, Andy, that they have the thought leader here. You are the thought leader. I started going through Beyond Mold and I got lost. It was beautiful. So what you've done is amazing. And I appreciate you so much. It is, taking it a step forward on the inexpense, taking a step forward on the education, but on the research side, which you've already done for a very, very long time. And what we know now, we can say thank you for, because you and Richie and everybody have done so much. So I think everybody owes you a grand thank you for all of this, because this is absolutely amazing. So how do people? It's beyondmold.com, right? Very simple.
And we're going through a major refresh. So in the next couple of days, the website's going to look totally different. And, there'll be all sorts of new resources and programs. And,
wow.
we're learning as we go too. But we always have sort of a vision in mind of what we're trying to bring into the world.
Absolutely.
And, I'm forever thankful of all the experts that have come together with me to build this. It's not one person. It's so many people, many you know, that have come together to do this, and it's very special.
That's wonderful. Thank you all for doing that, but thanks for being the leader to get that together. So beyondmold.com. And with that, I think that we can, mention too that all of these leaders have worked against the grain for a very long time. I think any patient that feels like they have not been believed and whatnot, you have to understand, you guys have been through that, because integrative medicine is now more widely accepted. I'm so grateful for that. And thank you for making a lot of that happen. So beyondmold.com, and you can go see your previous show that you've had with me on drpbetterlife.com, as well as many other shows. But I hope to have you on once again once this develops. And plus, I want to tell people in that by the time the show airs, you would have already revamped. This will be live and going. And so this will air in about a month, Andy, and we will, you'll be set and ready to go by then. And I can't wait to go deeper. So anything that we have missed at this point? Any other thoughts or?
I just think, if you're someone with unexplained symptoms and you haven't gotten answers and you haven't really considered your home, it's much more common than you think. Mm-hmm. And always worth, considering. So I would say, go ahead, do our mold sense screening, complete your visual test, fill out home risk assessment. You might be surprised. at what you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree with you 1,000%. So beyondmold.com, that will be on the website at drpbetterlife.com, drpbetterlife.com. And so that will be there as well as all other information. So go take a look as soon as this airs. And Andy, I appreciate you so much. Beyond just beyond mold and everything, I just appreciate you for all your teaching and everything that you've done for integrative medicine and for all of us. So thank you. And everybody, as usual, have a great week and please take care of each other.
You've been enjoying The Better Life with Dr. Marianne Pinkston. For more information, go to drpthebetterlife.com. That's drpthebetterlife.com. And listen next week for The Better Life with Dr. Pinkston.